Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about the Chronicles of Narnia films from 2005 to 2010, one of several adaptations of some of C.S. Lewis's Narnia novels. The first of the novels is The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, in which the four Pevensey children discover a magical wardrobe that leads them into the fantasy realm of Narnia, which languishes under the cruel regime of a witch queen who ensures that it is always winter but never Christmas, which is a very Northern Hemisphere centric point of view. Those of us in the South know, of course, that Christmas is in the middle of summer. As human children, the Pevenseys are a sign that the witch's rule is coming to an end, and friendly locals lead them on a journey to meet Aslan, the great lion who is the son of the Emperor over the sea and who has the power to overthrow the witch. Now, the evil queen, of course, is in no mind to let that happen, and her wily ways mean that not all of the Pevensey children are as eager to meet Aslan as you might expect. The story of the second film, Prince Caspian, occurs only 1 year later in our world, but centuries later in Narnia. Time does not pass at the same rate there as it does here. The Pevensey children find themselves once more summoned back to Narnia, this time by the call of a magical horn. The land they loved has been conquered by foreign invaders, and a struggling rebellion needs their aid to restore freedom to the realm. And then finally, in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the two youngest Pevensey children, along with their obnoxious cousin Eustace, find themselves once more transported to the magical realm, but this time as part of an ocean voyage to find 7 lost Narnian lords, a voyage that proves to be stalked by a malevolent force. So these movies are, as I said, based on the Narnia novels by C.S. Lewis, the first 3 novels, in fact, at least in publishing order. Lewis later released a prequel about the creation of Narnia, as well as another novel that happened during the same time period as The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and that has caused considerable argument about the correct reading order, but it's definitely publication order, in case you're wondering. In any case, while the first of these films was a big critical and commercial success, the second and third enjoyed a more muted response in both fields, and plans for a fourth film, based on the Silver Chair, never came to fruition. The next time that Narnia appears on the screens, it's likely to be on Netflix. It was announced recently that Greta Gerwig has been signed on to direct at least 2 films. I'm disappointed we never got the Silver Chair in this series because I enjoyed these movies quite a bit, and I think the filmmakers did about as good a job of creating strong adventure films as could be expected given the nature of the source material. Let's dive into that in a bit more detail. Though they have been well loved since their release some 70 years ago, both Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader present some serious issues for adaptation to the screen. In Prince Caspian, the primary challenge is that much of the film's conflict is interpersonal and internal, a question of faith, in fact, which should not be surprising given the strong Christian sensibilities and symbology in the series. Much of the book is occupied with characters struggling with their own faith or trying to persuade others not to give up their faith. A consequence of which is that there's very little space for the more direct, action-oriented spectacle that you generally want for a big screen adventure. I mean, it would be technically accurate, if quite unfair, to describe the book's plot as 4 children go for a long walk through the woods, and later on the woods thank them for it. In Voyage of the Dawn Treader, meanwhile, the book structure is very much that of a travelogue, as the kids once again face a series of choices and situations that are connected principally in that they test their character and faith. There's no real strong narrative link between the events other than the broadly defined quest to look for the missing nobleman, and no specific recurring threat to overcome other than the character's own doubts and baser impulses. Now, these are narratives that work better on the page, where we have a lot more access to the character's internal mental processes, than they are on the screen, where they'll be much less accessible. The filmmakers have, in my opinion, done a pretty good job of addressing that challenge. They've recognisably kept the overall plots of the books and their key events intact, while amping up the amount of action in Prince Caspian and providing a core adversary in Dawn Treader, which is responsible for many of the difficulties that they face on the voyage. Books and films are different media. What works in one may not work in another. Changes aren't necessarily good. I'm happy to talk your ear off about alterations that I dislike in Peter Jackson's adaptation of The Two Towers, for instance, but they're also not necessarily bad, and in the case of these films, I think the changes are good. Now, there's an old adage in the film industry, never work with children or animals, and it was, to my mind, amply demonstrated by the BBC's television adaptation of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe back in 1988. The series was critically successful despite its threadbare production with creature costumes that sometimes looked like they'd been raided from a school play, but to my mind the bigger problem was the young cast. They clearly tried their best, but the production's limited resources and sometimes clunky dialogue meant that they were being asked to shoulder an acting burden that would have challenged even experienced performers, which obviously, by definition of their age, they were not. There are no such issues here. With many, many times the budget available to them, the filmmakers have had plenty of resources to not only find the best talent of all ages, but also to give them time and space to really solidify their portrayals. The 5 young actors who played the Pevensies and Cousin Eustace have largely gone on to long-term acting careers, with Will Poulter achieving perhaps the highest profile role in portraying Adam Warlock in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, the talent doesn't end with the kids, of course. Tilda Swinton is great as the evil witch of the first film, for instance, and many talking animals of Narnia again voiced by fine actors. But the youngsters are the main characters. They're the protagonists of the tale. The casting for those roles had to be really solid, and it is. Now, one thing I do think is important to call out is that the Narnia novels were first released in the 1950s and were written by a devout, white, Anglo-Saxon male Christian. They in large part reflect the attitude of the time and of their author. This includes some old-fashioned gender bias, an explicit message that belief in anyone other than Aslan, who is Narnia's analogue for Jesus, is wrong. Now, the worst instances of those elements don't come in these 3 books. They come in the final Narnia book, The Last Battle. If you Google the problem of Susan, you'll get one fine example. Now, as I said, that book wasn't adapted here, but there are still problematic parts in the earlier works too. And while the films do make an effort to address these, such as by allowing the female Pevensies some actual action sequences of their own, and by including one subplot that I choose to interpret as a deliberate acknowledgement and refutation of the problem of Susan, they aren't perfect in excising them all. It's conspicuous, for instance, that all of the heroes in Prince Caspian have British accents, while the villains are overwhelmingly Mediterranean in appearance. Now, that's accurate to the book, but it's one area where I'd happily accepted a bit more artistic license. And then there's the strong theological slant of the original works. C.S. Lewis denied that the books were a Christian allegory, but in my opinion he did so based on a fine definitional point about the word allegory, which has little relevance to the everyday use of the word. The parallels between Aslan and Jesus are many and obvious, even if the former is a giant talking lion, and the movies include him delivering lines such as, "You can find me in your world just under another name," which is, not exactly subtle. Now, I'm personally willing to overlook these parts in order to enjoy the fine fantasy adventure that's on offer, but for some viewers it will be more of an issue, so it's best to be aware of it before you sit down to watch these films. Overall, though, I did enjoy the Narnia films, and as I said, I wish we'd got more of them. Next time, Counterblast, also known as The Devil's Plot. Whatever title it's using, it's a rather quirky little offering from 1948. But that is next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.